Hey guys, it's Bill Straw with Modern Thirst. Today we've got a very interesting tasting for you. It is we're going to call it a new release, but it's one that you've heard of before and has been around for a while. If that doesn't make sense, well, it's because it's a re-release of something that was just discontinued a few months ago, and that's the Heaven Hill Bottled in Bond. Now, this release doesn't come without a little bit of controversy. Pretty much anything anyone does anymore in bourbon has some sort of controversy, but the previous edition of Heaven Hill Bottled in Bond, the green label, the white and green label that you can see over my shoulder here, was a Kentucky-only release for a long time. Bottled in Bond started with Heaven Hill back in 1939. It was the #1 selling bourbon in Kentucky. And this edition, more recently, was about, I found it anywhere from 11 to 15 bucks here in Kentucky, and it was only sold in Kentucky. So here in this area, in the Bluegrass, it was kind of a lot of people's go-to bourbon. It was 6 years old, it was 100 proof, tasty little bourbon, and you could find it anywhere it was affordable. Heaven Hill discontinued that. Now, I understand that because at that price point, it's really not profitable to them. It's such a small distribution area that it's probably more of a hassle than not. But the new one that they're bringing out is unfortunately not going to be distributed in Kentucky, at least initially. And I know a lot of folks here, and me included, kind of felt like that was a little bit of a slap in the face because the Kentucky drinkers, the Kentucky bourbon people are the ones that really floated Heaven Hill Bottled in Bond for a couple of decades when it was a Kentucky-only release. So I really hope that Heaven Hill reconsiders that stance, and I hope that they bring out this new Bottled in Bond here in Kentucky. With that, let's talk about the new one. So the new Bottled in Bond, you can see it's a brand new packaging. It's all right. I think it's probably a little nicer than the old packaging. It does have a real cork, which I don't know if you're real familiar with how packaging goes, but that makes it a little more expensive to bottle it. It is a nice label. This one is 7 years old. The previous one was 6. Of course, it's 100 proof since it's bottled in Bond. And the other big change on this is the retail price is $39.99. So the last one that people were getting here in Kentucky for $13, $14, $15 is no more. Even if this comes back to Kentucky, it's still going to be a $40 bottle. In today's climate, this probably makes more sense. I think it might be a little slightly overpriced, but it's 7 years old and bottled in Bond. I think that $40 is not that bad of a deal anymore. But we're going to taste this, and if you're going to taste the new Bottled in Bond and compare it, then I think it's probably best if, what's the best way to do this? Right. Should probably have the old one to taste next to the new one, right? So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to taste the old style, 6-year-old Heaven Hill Bottled in Bond next to the brand new 7-year-old, and we're going to see how they taste. So let's take a pour of these. Now, I should mention I've reviewed the 6-year Bottled in Bond on my website. It was actually my favorite in our bottom shelf bourbon. I think we call it the Budget Bourbon Battle Royale. Now, it's not really, it was, while you would have found it on the bottom shelf, it was very seldom considered to be a bad whiskey by any means. It was always a very popular one in Kentucky. So it's a little bit of a misnomer to call it bottom shelf per se. Really, it's just a budget bourbon, or it was a budget bourbon. So let's go ahead and start with the new one. I think that's what most people are interested in. Yeah, it has that oakiness, that kind of cashews and almonds that I always got out of the old Bottled in Bond. Very sweet, and it is very oak forward. Something about Heaven Hill, I don't know what it is, but they can age something in 6-7 years and it smells as oaky and tastes as aged as a lot of 8, 9, 10-year-old products from some other distilleries. In this case, it's very nice. That oak is there, and it's very well balanced on the nose. So let's compare that to the previous edition. Real similar. Yeah, there's a note of vanilla and caramel on both of these, and a little bit of a kind of a simple syrup going on there. It almost kind of gets into that circus peanuts flavor that I get from Heaven Hill's wheated stuff, but this is obviously not a wheated bourbon. This is their standard rye mash bill. What I get is some more fruit on the new one. I get a little bit of kind of an apricot and almost a little bubble gum on that. And I get a little of the bubble gum on this, but what it is it's not as strong. It's not as a concentrated a nose as the 7-year. And there's almost a hint of, I think you get a little more of the barrel tannins in this one, which is, if you're used to kind of picking out some aromas and stuff in bourbon, the barrel tannins, it's kind of a bitter, some people confuse it with the rye, the black pepper rye spice, but really the barrel tannins are where it's kind of started to, the barrel has started to peak. When I said that Heaven Hill stuff tends to taste a little bit older, the issue with that is that when Heaven Hill stuff gets really old, if it gets out past 12 years, and even a lot of times at 12 years if it's a single barrel, it's really, really over oaked. In this case, this one tastes, or smells, excuse me, older than the new one. And by that I mean it smells like it may have spent, or it may have been nearing the end of the life of the barrel when it's actually making the whiskey better. And that, I know a lot of people don't think that's the case, or might think that that's weird for a 6-year-old product, but you know, bourbon's different, and it depends on where you age it, what type of barrels it's in, how long. In a case of Heaven Hill, it's really not that unusual at all. And when I say that, I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that for this presentation, this is probably, for those particular barrels, you probably didn't want them to go any longer than this. But it's slightly tannic on the nose, much sweeter. I'm getting some more earthy notes to this one too, maybe a little bit of tobacco. But definitely some light sweet fruits in that they might be present in this, but it's very subtle, if so. Let's move on to the taste. Very, very good traditional Heaven Hill flavors. Reminds me a lot of the 6-year I drank regularly. It's definitely oaky. You get that rush of oak right down the center of the palate. I don't know exactly where these were in the rick houses. I'm guessing they probably come from all over the place in Heaven Hill's rick houses. But this one, very sweet. Right down the center of the palate, you get the oak. There is a black pepper note on the periphery, and you do get barrel tannins on the end, so you get just a hint of that bitterness right as the finish begins. You know, the nuttiness I usually get in these 6 years, I don't really get it as much in this, but what I do get is some sweetness, maybe some, not really that simple syrup, but more along the lines of cinnamon toast, kind of a baked goods, almost a coffee cake, spice cake type of flavor on that one. Let's try the 6-year. It's really similar on the palate. I mean, it's really similar. So what I'm really doing here is splitting hairs between the two of them. They probably have done a different job selecting barrels than they used to for the batches of the 6-year-old. So while it's only a year older and it's technically the same product at the same proof, I'm guessing the barrel selection methods were a little bit different, especially since they're presenting this as a limited edition special release. But this one has a flavor on the end it's very nutty. Yeah, this one is almost peanuts, salted peanuts, a little bit of cashew on there. Not really the almond I would kind of expect. There's a little bit of the fruitiness on the outside of them. Both of them have this kind of a almost the canned peaches kind of flavor on the periphery. This one is a little sweeter with that's a little sweeter, that canned peaches thing. It's almost kind of sticky sweet, where this one is a little more subdued. But they're very similar. The barrel tannins on this one are probably a little bit sharper, which, if you ask my opinion, I just think they probably put a little more care into selecting the specific barrels that went into this batch than that they were doing regularly on these. Because again, this was a $13 to $15 bottle of bourbon, Kentucky only. While I'm not saying they would mail it in or anything like that when picking those barrels, I do think it's likely that they put a lot more effort into picking this specific batch just because it's limited edition, it's a relaunch, they're trying to put their best foot forward. And I think that's what you get. I think what you get is the difference between these two is obviously it's a year older, but I think what they really did is they were a little more careful on picking barrels for this, because to me, it's a very, very, very similar set of whiskeys here. And if you had blindfolded me and had me taste these, I'm not sure that I would be able to pick which one was older. All I know is that this one just tastes a little bit more refined, a little bit better balanced. The 7 years is ever so slightly, and again, we're just splitting hairs here, just a little bit better, I think. Is it double the price? 2.5 times the price better? No. I would still drink this all day long if it was still available at 15 bucks. It would still be my go-to and my daily drinker, which it was before, which is why you can see I stocked up on it when they announced it was being discontinued. But I like it, and I think that if they bring it to Kentucky, I'm definitely going to buy it again, because it is the flavor profile that I kind of, I don't want to say I grew up with it, but I kind of grew up with it. As far as my bourbon drinking goes, it was kind of always the readily available, affordable, always consistent bourbon that I always grabbed. If I was in a liquor store and needed a bottle of bourbon, didn't know what to get, couldn't make up my mind, you can never go wrong with the old 6-year. The 7 year is real similar. It's a little more expensive. I don't know that I would ever buy it as often as I did the 6 year, but it's still a pretty good bourbon. And is it worth $40? That's kind of up to you. I very rarely will review or taste a bourbon with price in mind. At least I won't score it based on price, because value is very subjective depending on who you're speaking to. You know, an ER doctor or a surgeon might not care about a $40 bourbon. It might be pocket change to them, but you know, working class folks and people who are you know, just starting out in life are probably looking for better value than that, I guess, in a lot of ways. So I always try not to harp too much on price. And I also will admit this was way underpriced before it was discontinued. So you really can't judge it based on that. $40, if you were to just objectively say is a 7-year-old bottle and bond bourbon worth $40, I would say yeah, probably right around there, 35 to 40. So yeah, if this is released in one of your states, by all means, you know, grab a bottle of it. It's tasty. You're going to get a good idea. If you can never get this in your state, you'll get a real good idea of what it tasted like by tasting this, and that alone, I think, makes it worth picking up at least one bottle sometime in your life if you like to have a bunch of bottles set aside. So if you like what we're doing, please like and subscribe to us on YouTube. Consider supporting us on patreon.com/ModernThirst. Every little bit helps. We are in the process now of developing some challenge coins. Patreon supporters will get first crack at that, so please consider that. And we really hope you check us out at ModernThirst.com. We've got hundreds of whiskeys reviewed there, and we're always reviewing more. But thanks a lot for watching. Hope you guys have a great day, and cheers.